My name is David. I'm 26 years old and I live in a small apartment in Cleveland, Ohio. It's not a luxurious place. It's on the fourth floor of an old brick building with hallways that always smell faintly of dust and an elevator that groans like it's on its last breath. But my apartment has hardwood floors, large windows, and most importantly, it's mine. An old building has its own sounds, the creaking of the floorboards, the groaning of the water pipes. I figured it was part of the charm, the whispers of history. I've never been a superstitious person. To me, everything has a logical explanation. But I could not find a single logical explanation for what happened on the Saturday of my second week there. I had fallen into a deep sleep after a long day of work, and then I woke up, or I thought I had. I was aware that I was lying in bed, but my body was as stiff as stone. An invisible heavy weight pressed down on my chest, making each breath a struggle. My eyes were wide open, fixed on the darkness of my bedroom, but I couldn't move a single finger. Sleep paralysis. I had heard of it, a neurological event, a temporary desynchronization between the brain and the body. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it would pass quickly, and then I heard the creaking. It wasn't the normal creaking of the old house. This sound came from my bedroom door. It was slowly swinging open. In the darkness of the hallway, a tall, lanky, thin figure appeared. It stood there for a moment as if observing. And then it began to move into the room. It didn't walk. It shuffled, with a limp, painfully. Each step was jerky and unnatural, as if all the joints in its body were broken and had been put back together incorrectly. Its arm and leg joints bent at unnatural angles. As it moved, I heard a dry, hideous clicking sound, like old bones rubbing against each other. It had no face, just a smooth head, tilted to one side as if its neck had been snapped. A monster. A vivid nightmare. It slowly shuffled across the room, heading straight for my bed. Absolute horror rose up in me. I wanted to scream, to fight, but I was just a prisoner in my own body. The irony was cruel and biting. I, a healthy, able-bodied man, was lying helpless while that broken and pained monster was the only thing that could move. It reached the foot of the bed. It slowly raised a long, thin arm, its fingers clenched into a fist. Just as it was about to touch me with a burst of will driven by pure terror, I broke the paralysis. I shot up with a scream, drenched in sweat. The room was empty. The bedroom door was shut tight. I panted, my heart hammering like a drum. I looked around, trying to cling to reality. The familiar wall, the closet. Everything was normal. It was just a dream, a horrifying nightmare, nothing more. Maybe it was the stress of the move or the dinner I'd had. I reassured myself with a series of logical explanations. Eventually, I fell back asleep, believing the nightmare was just a strange, one-off event. I could not have been more wrong. A few nights later, it happened again. I fell asleep and was once again seized by sleep paralysis. That same feeling of paralysis, that same invisible weight. And the bedroom door slowly creaked open again. The broken man appeared again, and again began its hideous shuffle toward me. My mind was completely alert. I knew I was dreaming. I also knew exactly what I needed to do. I focused on the feeling of my fingers, commanding them to move. I roared in silence, and after a struggle that seemed to last an eternity, I woke up with a gasp. I sat bolt upright in bed, feeling a sense of relief and victory. I had beaten it. Just a damn dream, I muttered, wiping the sweat from my forehead. I felt annoyed by this recurring nightmare. I decided to get up and go to the kitchen for a cold glass of water to cool down. And this is when I should have realized something was wrong. I was drinking water, but my throat was still parched, as if no water was flowing through it at all. I knew for sure, I'm still in the dream. I took 2 steps into the middle of the room, and then once again my body suddenly went rigid. No warning, no transition. One moment I was walking and the next I was a statue. My muscles locked up mid-movement, one foot slightly raised off the floor, my arms swinging. I was frozen in place. I realized a horrifying truth. I had had another sleep paralysis episode, but this time, it was while I was standing. A wave of pure terror, more powerful than anything I had ever felt, crashed down on me. The helplessness was now infinitely worse. I no longer had the security of my bed. I was standing exposed in the middle of the room, a living statue of fear, unable to move, unable to scream, able only to dart my eyes around in a panic. And then I heard the familiar, hideous shuffling sound. The tall, thin, terrifying figure wasn't at the door anymore. It was right in front of me, just inches away. I was forced to stare at its smooth, featureless head. I could feel an intangible coldness radiating from it, a cold of decay, of broken bones. It slowly raised a thin, broken arm as if to touch my face. My body was completely numb. I told myself to run, but my feet were fixed to the spot, unmoving. The invisible cold radiating from the broken man seemed to freeze the very air around me. I was trapped, a statue of flesh and bone, forced to confront the hideous reflection of pain. My imaginary eyes followed its thin, broken arm as it slowly rose, its clenched fingers now just inches from my face. My mind was screaming, "Run! Get back! Do something!" But my body had betrayed me, imprisoned by a power I couldn't comprehend. And then its bony, cold fingers touched my cheek. There was no pain. Instead, an electric shock shot down my spine. I woke up one more time. This time, I was back in bed in a huddled position. The room had returned to normal. No monster, no paralysis. I could move. I quickly sat up, looking around the room in a state of absolute panic. Was it over? Was this real this time? I didn't dare to believe it. I sat on the bed for a long time, not daring to step onto the floor, afraid that the ground beneath my feet would be just another trap. But the exhaustion had reached its peak. My eyelids were heavy. My body and spirit had both been worn down to their very core. I had no more strength left to be afraid. I just wanted the emptiness. And then, for the first time on that horrific night, I fell into a real sleep, a deep and dreamless slumber brought on by complete and utter exhaustion. The nightmare, it seemed, was over. I thought I had won, that my will had defeated the monster. I thought that when the sun rose, everything would be okay. But I didn't realize that the scariest nightmare isn't what you see when your eyes are closed. It's what's waiting for you when you open them. I woke up to a peaceful silence. The warm morning sun was shining through the window, filling the room with a gentle yellow light. There was no feeling of heaviness, no fear. I felt a deep fatigue in every muscle, but it was the fatigue of a body that had truly rested. The dream was over. I sat up in bed, a small, relieved smile on my lips. I had made it through. I looked around the room. Everything was normal. The chair, the closet, the bedroom door was still shut tight. And then I decided I would stand up, start a new day, a day that was no longer haunted. I swung my legs over the side of the bed to stand up, but the moment my right foot touched the floor, a sharp, searing pain like a knife shot through my knee. I cried out in pain and collapsed onto the edge of the bed, clutching my knee. The cruelly familiar pain. I was panting not from fear, but from the brutal truth that had just crashed down on me. I sighed and sat on the edge of the bed, and there, next to my nightstand, was a pair of metal crutches. And wrapped around my throbbing knee was a bulky medical brace. I propped myself up on the crutches, struggling to stand, every joint in my body seeming to creak in protest. I accidentally saw myself in the mirror, limping in pain. That's right, the nightmare from my dream was right there in that mirror. It was me. Perhaps for me at that time, the nightmare wasn't being locked in a dream, nor was it being stalked by a monster. The nightmare was reality itself. I bet everyone has had to face a time of failure and being lost in their life. For me, it was that moment when a football player puts an end to his playing career with a terrible injury. And then after that dream, I seemed to realize something, like an obvious truth I should have acted on long ago. To accept reality. To find a new path for myself. I did something that I had struggled with and refused to do countless times just to deny this reality. I reached for my phone. I didn't search for nightmares or paranormal phenomena. I looked up the number for a psychotherapist, and I made the call.